Welcome to the Elite Program. Behind me on the whiteboard is a little map of what the training year looks like for our Perform, Compete and Elite athletes. On this side here, you'll see all the months leading through to eventually when the CrossFit semi-finals is. Essentially, it's starting at May because that's a month after the CrossFit Open. We're going to be having a look at this final column here for the Elite Program. Now, typically how we write out a periodization plan is we start by noting when we want our athletes to be physically and mentally at their very best. And of course, the Elite Program, the goal is to peak our athletes for the semi-finals of the CrossFit Games season, which based on this year is going to be in June next year. So we simply work backwards from there as we map out the training year. Now, there are 5 categories of training that we typically map into a periodization cycle: a deload phase, a competition phase, a pre-competition phase, an intensification phase, and an accumulation phase. So let's work our way back from June and what the year is going to look like. Of course, competition time is going to be in June. That's when we're actually going to be doing the semi-finals themselves. The 2 months prior to that, we're going to be in a pre-competition phase. That means we're doing things like weekend simulations. Our training is going to look like the sport itself. The training in the rest of the week in the pre-comp phase is just going to be kind of maintaining strength, keeping us physically and mentally sharp, and setting us up for success when we do those simulations. Prior to that, we're moving through a 2-month intensification phase. Intensification, generally speaking, means that our strength training is going to be much heavier at lower volumes. We're doing less supplementary or kind of hypertrophy work. We're doing kind of the full lifts when it comes to Olympic lifting. Our energy system is starting to look a little bit more like the sport. So rather than kind of broken down intervals or EMOMs, we're now doing AMRAPs, rounds of time, kind of funky different settings there that we typically see within the sport. Prior to that now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months of accumulation work. Now, what does accumulation mean? Accumulation generally means that we're doing higher volume at lower intensities with our strength training. We might be doing more supplementary bodybuilding, kind of healthy style strength training. We're spending time practicing skills with regards to conditioning. We're spending time doing longer bouts of aerobic conditioning, probably doing more kind of monostructural work versus really hard testers. Within our gymnastics, we may be focusing a little bit more on developing strict strength, absolute strength and capacity versus doing huge amounts of kind of kipping or sport specific volume. And essentially, this big chunk of accumulation work is setting us up to be able to do more intense bouts of training, which eventually allows us to be at our physical and mental best when it comes to the competition time. Now, if there are athletes who are doing competitions throughout the year, then of course we simply kind of slide those things into the calendar, but we don't necessarily peak our athletes for those competitions. We're simply sliding them in, giving a small 2 to 3 week preparation phase, and then they hit the competition. Now, of course, within the accumulation phase, there will be phases which will be lower intensity and there will be phases which will be higher intensity. That's of course a part of the program, but remember, the goal is this time of year.